Ignored by her daughter at 68. One letter changed everything. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Maria's hands trembled as she held the coffee mug close to her chest, the warmth no longer reaching her fingertips as she gazed out the living room window. At 68, her once vibrant apartment had grown silent, devoid of the laughter and chatter that used to fill these walls. Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered against the autumn sky, but Maria barely noticed its beauty anymore. She was looking for just one car, her daughter Nancy's blue sedan, hoping against hope that today would be different. 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days had passed since they'd last spoken. What had started as a heated disagreement over Nancy's choice to marry Robert, despite Maria's concerns, had festered into a wound so deep that no phone call or letter seemed capable of healing it. Maria had tried everything, leaving voicemails that grew increasingly desperate with each unanswered call, sending birthday cards that received no acknowledgement, and keeping photographs of her granddaughter Sophie prominently displayed on the refrigerator even as they yellowed with age. The phone sat silent on the side table, its screen dark and unforgiving. Maria reached for it, scrolling through her contact list until she found Nancy, with a heart emoji beside it, an emoji her daughter had added years ago during a Christmas visit. Maria's finger hovered over the call button before pressing it. With a determined tap, 1 ring, 2 rings, 3, then the familiar electronic voice. The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service. Maria's breath caught in her chest. Disconnected. Had Nancy changed her number without telling her? The phone slipped from her grasp, landing on the hardwood floor with a clatter that echoed through the empty apartment. She didn't move to pick it up. Instead, she whispered into the silence, "Am I already dead to her?" The afternoon light faded into evening shadows as Maria moved through her familiar routine. She boiled a single egg for dinner, setting it on a plate beside a slice of toast she knew she wouldn't eat. She pulled out the chair across from hers, Nancy's chair, and stared at its emptiness, remembering the little girl with pigtails who once sat there, legs swinging as she slurped her chicken soup, and told Maria about her day at school. Later, that night, unable to sleep, Maria retrieved the shoebox from beneath her bed. It contained every unsent letter she'd written to Nancy over the years. She picked up the most recent one, dated just last week. The paper was wrinkled, the ink smudged in places where tears had fallen. Reading it over once more, she added a final line at the bottom. "I don't need you to say sorry. I just need you to remember that you were loved." With trembling hands, she folded the letter and slid it into an envelope. She wrote Nancy's last known address in careful letters, hoping it was still current. Then she pulled on her cardigan and walked 2 blocks to the corner mailbox, dropping the envelope inside before she could change her mind. The metallic thud as it hit the bottom sounded final, like a door closing. She didn't expect a reply. She'd learned not to expect anything anymore. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing, the March winds whipped around Maria as she made her way back from the grocery store, carrying a single bag containing items for one. 3 months had passed since she'd mailed that letter, and still nothing. The holidays had come and gone. Another Christmas spent alone, with only her neighbor Mrs. Goldstein joining her for a simple dinner. Maria had set 3 places at the table anyway, as if by some miracle Nancy and Sophie might appear. Her apartment building came into view, the same 6-story brick structure where she'd lived for the past 15 years. She'd chosen it specifically because it was only a 20-minute drive from Nancy's house, close enough for spontaneous visits, or so she had thought. Now that proximity felt like a cruel joke, a reminder of how near yet unreachable her daughter had become. As she approached the entrance, Maria noticed something unusual. a young woman sitting on the steps, hunched over in a blue coat. There was something familiar about the way she held her shoulders, about the dark hair spilling from beneath her knit hat. Maria's heart began to race, her grocery bag suddenly feeling 10 pounds heavier. The woman looked up as Maria's footsteps grew closer, and the world stopped turning. "Sophie," Maria whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Her granddaughter, now 17 and nearly a woman, stood and nervously brushed her hands against her jeans. "Hi, Grandma." Maria set down her groceries, her hands flying to her mouth. "Sophie, oh my goodness, look at you. You're so grown up." Sophie shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if unsure she should be there. "I found your letters in Mom's desk drawer, all of them. She never told me you were writing to us." Maria felt her knees weaken. "She kept them?" "Yeah, hidden, but she kept them." Sophie hesitated, then added, "I read them all yesterday when—" "She was at work. You never stopped trying to reach us, did you?" The revelation that Nancy had saved her letters, every single one, sent waves of conflicting emotions through Maria. Hope mingled with heartbreak. Why keep them if she couldn't forgive? Why hide them from Sophie? Will Nancy ever find the courage to read Maria's final plea for reconciliation? Or will pride continue to keep mother and daughter separated by an ocean of silence? The elevator ride to Maria's apartment was quiet, tension filling the small space as Sophie stared at the floor. Numbers lighting up one by one. There were 1,000 questions Maria wanted to ask, but she held them back, afraid of saying anything that might send her granddaughter running away again. Instead, she focused on the miracle of Sophie's presence, the fact that after all these years, at least one bridge might be rebuilt. Inside the apartment, Sophie's eyes wandered over the family photos still prominently displayed. School pictures that stopped at age 14, the last ones Maria had received before the silence began. She paused by a framed photo of Nancy's college graduation, Maria standing proudly beside her daughter in matching blue dresses. "Mom cries sometimes," Sophie said suddenly, her voice quiet. "Late at night when she thinks I'm asleep. I hear her. She never says why, but now I think I know." Maria's hands trembled as she prepared tea, trying to absorb this new information. "Your mother has always felt things deeply, even when she doesn't show it." "She doesn't talk about you," Sophie continued, accepting the steaming mug Maria offered. "But she hasn't removed any of your photos either. They're still on our mantel. And once, when I was cleaning her room as a surprise, I found your letters tied with a ribbon in her desk. She must have read them all." "Oh," Maria breathed, the single syllable carrying worlds of meaning. She sank onto the sofa beside Sophie, careful to leave space between them. "And your father, how is Robert?" Sophie's expression clouded. "They divorced 2 years ago. Dad moved to Seattle for work. I see him during summer breaks." The news struck Maria like a physical blow. Nancy had gone through a divorce, and Maria hadn't been there to support her. How many nights had her daughter cried alone, too proud or hurt to reach out to her mother? The thought was almost unbearable. Have you ever wondered what pain lies behind the silence of someone you once spoke to every day? The weight of all those unshared moments, the burden of pride that keeps two people apart when they need each other most. "Grandma," Sophie said, setting down her mug, "Mom doesn't know I'm here. She works late on Thursdays. I should probably go before she gets home and realizes I'm missing." Maria nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. "Of course, I understand. But I want to come back," Sophie added quickly. "And I think Mom needs to come too. She's not happy, hasn't been for a long time. I heard her crying after she got your last letter, the one about still being loved." Maria's heart constricted. She read it. She did. And then she locked herself in her room for hours. Sophie stood, adjusting her backpack. "I'm going to talk to her, really talk to her. about all of this. As Maria walked her granddaughter to the door, Sophie suddenly turned and wrapped her arms around her grandmother in a fierce embrace. Maria froze for a moment before returning the hug, breathing in the scent of Sophie's shampoo, feeling the solid reality of the young woman her little granddaughter had become. "We've missed so much time," Maria whispered. Sophie pulled back, her eyes, so like Nancy's, glistening with tears. "Then we shouldn't waste any more, should we?" After Sophie left, Maria sat by the window again, her tea gone cold beside her. For the first time in years, she watched the cars passing below with something other than despair. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. The world outside Maria's window transformed as winter reluctantly gave way to spring. Tiny green buds appeared on the trees lining the street, promising new life after months of dormancy. Inside her apartment, Maria had begun to feel a similar awakening. Sophie had returned twice since that first visit, each time staying longer, bringing stories and photographs from the years Maria had missed. But Nancy remained absent, a shadow between them that neither mentioned directly. Sophie would refer to Mom casually in conversation, reporting that she was doing well at her job as a hospital administrator, that she'd recently cut her hair short, that she still made lasagna using Maria's recipe every Sunday. Each detail was precious to Maria, collected and stored away like treasures. On a rainy April afternoon, Maria was organizing her linen closet when the doorbell rang. Assuming it was Mrs. Goldstein coming to borrow sugar again, she opened a doctor without checking the peephole. The woman standing in the hallway was not her neighbor. She had Nancy's eyes, Nancy's mouth, Nancy's hands clutching a familiar blue envelope. But her hair was indeed shorter now, framing her face in a way that made her look both older and somehow more vulnerable. "Mom," Nancy said, the word barely audible. Maria gripped the doorframe for support, afraid her legs might give way. "Nancy, is it really you?" Nancy nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "I'm sorry it took me so long." The world seemed to narrow to just this moment, this doorway, this miracle unfolding before Maria's eyes. She stood frozen, afraid that any movement might shatter the fragile reality of her daughter's presence. Nancy held up the blue envelope, Maria's last letter visible inside. "You wrote that you don't need me to say sorry, but I do need to say it. I need to say it 1,000 times. I've been so wrong, so stubborn. Sophie's been trying to tell me for weeks, but I couldn't. I was afraid to face you after everything." "Oh, Nancy," Maria whispered, finding her voice at last. "You're here now. That's all that matters." Nancy took a hesitant step forward, then another until she was close enough for Maria to see the fine lines around her eyes, the silver strands woven through her darker hair. "Why didn't you give up on me, Mom? After all this time, all my silence?" Maria's lips trembled as she answered, "Because that's not what mothers do." Something broke. In Nancy's expression then, some final wall crumbling away. She fell into Maria's arms with a sob that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, the letter crushed between them as they held each other. "I was so angry," Nancy cried, her words muffled against Maria's shoulder. "But really, I was just lost. Your letter, your words, they broke something in me. They broke the wall I built to keep from missing you." Maria stroked her daughter's hair, her own tears flowing freely now. "I missed you every day, every single day." They moved inside, Nancy's coat dripping rainwater onto the entryway floor, neither of them caring. They sat close together on the sofa where Maria had sat alone for so many evenings, and slowly, haltingly, they began to talk. About Robert's betrayal that Nancy had been too ashamed to share with her mother. About Maria's diagnosis of early-stage breast cancer 2 years ago, treatment undergone with only Mrs. Goldstein to drive her to appointments. about the countless milestones and mundane moments lost to pride and misunderstanding. "Sophie's been visiting you," Nancy said. It wasn't a question. Maria tensed slightly. "Yes, she found your drawer of letters. She came a few weeks ago." To Maria's surprise, Nancy smiled through her tears. "She told me. She's been trying to get me to come. And too, she's smarter than both of us, I think." "She's remarkable," Maria agreed. "You've raised an amazing young woman." "I wish you'd been there to help me," Nancy admitted softly. "There were so many times I needed my mum." Maria squeezed her daughter's hand. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." As evening approached, Nancy called Sophie to join them. The 3 generations of women sat around Maria's small dining table, eating pizza ordered from the place around the corner, talking and laughing as if attempting to compress 3 years of separation into a single night. When Sophie went to use the bathroom, Nancy looked at her mother seriously. "I want to make this right, Mom. Not just today, but going forward. I want us to be family again." Maria reached across the table to touch her daughter's cheek. "We never stopped being family, my love, even in the silence. Have you ever experienced a broken relationship that seemed beyond repair or known? Someone who stayed estranged from family for years? Share your thoughts in the comments below." The spring days lengthened into summer, and Maria's apartment, once so quiet, now regularly filled with voices. Nancy and Sophie came for Sunday dinners, every week without fail. They planted flowers in the small community garden behind Maria's building, marigolds and petunias that Sophie insisted would attract butterflies. They celebrated Maria's 69th birthday with a homemade cake and off-key singing that made Mrs. Goldstein bang on the wall in mock annoyance. But rebuilding wasn't always easy. There were moments when old patterns threatened to emerge, when Nancy bristled at Maria's suggestions, or when Maria had to stop herself from offering unwanted advice. There were silences sometimes, heavy with the weight of the years they'd lost. Yet they pushed through them, each determined not to waste any more time. On a warm July evening, Maria sat at her kitchen table while Nancy prepared a salad for dinner. Sophie had gone to meet friends, promising to return for dessert. The rhythmic sound of Nancy's knife against the cutting board filled the comfortable silence between them. "I found a box of Dad's old photographs yesterday," Nancy said suddenly, setting down her knife. "There was one of you and him on your honeymoon. You look so young and happy." Maria smiled, remembering. "We were 23 and thinking we had all the answers." "I saw myself in your face," Nancy continued. "The same expression Sophie gets sometimes. 3 generations of stubborn women." "Determined women," Maria corrected gently. "It served us well, mostly, though sometimes it gets in our way." Nancy wiped her hands on a dish towel and sat across from her mother. "Did you ever regret it? Standing your ground with me about Robert, even though it cost us so much time?" The question hung between them, one they'd carefully avoided since Nancy's return. Maria considered her answer carefully. "I regret the years we lost," she said finally. "But I don't regret caring enough to worry about you. I just wish I'd found a better way to show it." Nancy nodded slowly. "I couldn't hear anything then. I was so sure I knew best." "Well, mothers don't always know better," Maria admitted. "But we always love harder, even when it's silent, even when it hurts." Nancy reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "I read every letter you sent, you know. Even when I was angriest, I read them all." Maria's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You never answered." "I started to, dozens of times. I'd write paragraphs, pages even, but I could never mail them. Pride or fear or both, I don't know." "And the last one? What made that one different?" Nancy's eyes glistened. "You wrote that you didn't need an apology, just for me to remember I was loved. It hit me that while I was holding on to being right, you were just holding on to me." Could their story of reconciliation inspire others who remain separated from loved ones by walls of pride and misunderstanding? What might happen if you sent that letter or made that call you've been putting off? As summer faded into autumn, the rhythms of their reunited lives settled into comfortable patterns. Maria found herself busier than she had been in years. She joined Nancy and Sophie for dinner at their house twice a week. She accompanied them on a weekend trip to Lake Michigan, where they rented a small cabin and spent hours walking along the shoreline, collecting smooth stones and watching the sunset. On a crisp October morning, Maria was surprised to find Nancy at her door, unannounced and carrying a large cardboard box. "I have the day off," Nancy explained, stepping inside. "And I've been thinking about something." Maria eyed the box curiously. "What's that?" "Well," Nancy set the box on the coffee table, "Sophie's senior year is busy, and this apartment is so small, and my house has 3 bedrooms with one sitting empty." Maria's heart began to race. "Nancy, what are you saying?" "I'm saying—" Nancy opened the box to reveal photo albums and framed pictures "that I think it's time you moved in with us. If you want to. The guest room gets the morning sun, perfect for your reading, and Sophie would love having you there." "And you?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would you love having me there too?" Nancy smiled, her eyes shining with certainty. "More than anything, Mom, these past months have shown me how much better life is with you in it. Every day, not just visits." Maria sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed. Moving in with Nancy and Sophie, it was more than she had dared to hope for during those long years of silence. Yet there was hesitation too. "What about my independence? What about yours? We're both used to our own spaces now." Nancy sat beside her mother. "We'll figure it out day by day. All I know is that we've lost too much time already. Sophie will be off to college next year, and then it'll be just me rattling around in that house. Unless you're there too." Maria looked around her small apartment, at the memories contained within its walls. "I'll need time to think about it." "Of course," Nancy nodded. "No rush. Just know the offer is there." As they began looking through the photo albums Nancy had brought, pictures of Maria's late husband, of Nancy as a child, of Sophie as a baby, Maria felt something shift inside her. The past would always be there, precious and preserved in these photographs, but perhaps her future belonged elsewhere now, in a house filled with the voices of the people she loved most. The transition wasn't immediate. Maria took her time, sorting through decades of possessions, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Nancy and Sophie helped on weekends, turning the task into a journey through family history as objects triggered stories that hadn't been told in years. By Thanksgiving, the decision had been made. Maria would move in after the holidays, starting the new year in Nancy's home, their home now. The guest room was repainted in Maria's favorite shade of blue, and Sophie insisted on hanging Maria's embroidered artwork on the walls. "It's strange," Maria confided to Mrs. Goldstein as they shared a goodbye cup of tea in her half-packed apartment. 3 years ago, I would have given anything just to hear Nancy's voice on the phone. Now I'm going to be living under the same roof." Mrs. Goldstein patted her hand. "Life has its own timing, dear. Sometimes the longest detours lead to exactly where we're supposed to be." On the evening before the moving truck was scheduled to arrive, Maria sat alone by her window one last time. The Chicago lights twinkled below, the scene so familiar she could have painted it from memory. She thought of all the hours she'd spent in this spot, watching and waiting for a blue sedan that never came. The pain of those days felt distant now, like a story that had happened to someone else. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. "Everything ready for tomorrow. Sophie made your bed with the quilt from Grandma." Maria smiled as she typed back, "All ready. Thank you both." 3 simple words that contained worlds of healing. The morning of the move dawned clear and cold. Nancy and Sophie arrived early, bringing coffee and bagels. As the movers began carrying Maria's furniture down to the truck, Sophie linked her arm through her grandmother's. "This is going to be great," she said confidently. "You'll see." Nancy joined them, slipping her arm around Maria's other side so that the three generations stood connected, watching the physical manifestations of Maria's past life being carefully packed away. "Are you sad, Mom?" Nancy asked softly. Maria considered the question, gazing around the apartment that had witnessed her loneliest hours. "No," she realized with some surprise. "I'm ready." It wasn't until they were driving away, Maria in the passenger seat of Nancy's car, no longer blue but a sensible grey, that she felt tears welling in her eyes. Not tears of grief, but of gratitude, for second chances, for letters read in secret, for granddaughters brave enough to cross divides, for daughters who finally found their way home. "You know," Nancy said as they turned onto the main road, "Sophie asked me something interesting last night. She wanted to know what finally made me read your last letter after keeping it unopened for so long." Maria turned to her daughter. "Curious. What did you tell her?" Nancy smiled, keeping her eyes on the road. "I said I'd always read them all, every single one, but that day was the anniversary of Dad's death and I was missing him terribly. I was missing you too. Then your letter arrived and it felt like a sign." "From your father?" Maria asked. "Maybe," Nancy nodded, "or maybe just from my heart, finally ready to listen." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city giving way to suburban streets lined with trees beginning to shed their autumn colors. As they turned onto Nancy's street, their street now, Maria noticed a new mailbox out front, freshly painted with flowers along the side. "Sophie's art project," Nancy explained, following her mother's gaze. "She said our family deserves a pretty place for important letters." Maria smiled, touching her daughter's hand briefly. "I don't think I'll be needing to mail you letters anymore." "No," Nancy agreed with a soft laugh, "but I thought maybe we could write them anyway sometimes, when words are hard to say out loud." As they pulled into the driveway of the house, that would now be home to 3 generations of determined women, Maria felt a sense of completion, of circles closing and new ones beginning. The pain of separation had etched itself into her heart, but now those grooves were being filled with new memories, new laughter, new love. Later that evening, after the movers had left and the 3 women had shared a simple dinner among half-unpacked boxes, Maria stepped out onto the back porch alone. The night air was crisp with approaching winter, stars visible between scattered clouds. From inside, she could hear Sophie and Nancy laughing about something, the sound drifting through the partially open door like music. A neighbor walking. A dog waved from the sidewalk, and Maria waved back, already feeling part of this new community. Tomorrow, she would help Sophie with her college applications. Next week, she would plant bulbs in the garden that would bloom in spring. In December, the 3 of them would decorate a Christmas tree together. So much life ahead, after years of merely existing. When asked by a friend what had changed everything, Maria would simply smile and say, "A letter and a little bit of love that refused to die. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel."